Hi, my name's Phil. I like to write politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the latest round of Brexit talks. Oh yes, they're still going on. No idea why, but they're still going on. And how the British side have admitted that there is insufficient progress being made at this almost halfway point. And how the EU have cheekily thrown one of the Brexiteers' own slogans right back in their face like a wet haddock. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So rather than go over the same old ground again in this farce of a Brexit negotiation, which even the EU are saying that are not being entered into in the right spirit by the British side, I'd like to focus on two aspects of the recent exchanges from the talks this week. The first is the demonstrable lie that David Frost and Boris Johnson keep pushing in their appeal to their ignorant supporters, and the way the EU have thrown the Brexiteers' words back into their own faces in return. So first of all, the reason why the British side are saying that there is insufficient progress is this level playing field aspect. Of course, it's absolute nonsense. The reason there is insufficient progress is because Boris Johnson desperately does not want to agree a deal. But, you know, the EU insist that if we are to strike a deal, at its heart has to be the level playing field. And for the avoidance of doubt, this means they will not agree to any deal that allows the UK to undercut the EU in any business dealings. Obvious, really. Only an imbecile would sign a trade deal that allows the other side an unfair competitive advantage over you. In unrelated news, this is exactly the sort of trade deal that Boris Johnson wants to sign with the US and has already started passing legislation this week to allow US companies to undercut UK ones. But back to the EU talks. So David Frost, the chief negotiator for the UK, keeps saying that this concept of the level playing field, it never came up before, it's recent and it's totally unprecedented. This thing doesn't exist in other trade deals. The fact is, it is neither new nor unprecedented. It exists in all trade deals around the world. But the most egregious part of this lie is that Boris Johnson signed up to it himself. The problem is that his supporters do not bother to fact check. They've never even read the withdrawal agreement. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not expect everyone or even interested people to have read the withdrawal agreement. But at the same time, you can't go saying how certain you are about what's in it if you haven't read it. In this case, the relevant passage is as follows. So, let me read it out here. It says, given the Union and the United Kingdom's geographic proximity and economic interdependence, the future relationship must ensure open and fair competition, encompassing robust commitments to ensure a level playing field. This is a direct quote from Boris Johnson's deal, the one he agreed with the EU last year and the one he signed this year. It's not even a level playing field, in other words, to fool the unwary. These are the actual words used in the English version of the withdrawal agreement that Boris Johnson says was a brilliant deal, an oven-ready deal, in fact, and that he himself gleefully signed. So lies like this are not a negotiating position. You can understand them telling a few lies as a negotiating position, okay, but this isn't one because everyone involved knows what the truth of the matter is. You can't possibly fool someone who's read the withdrawal agreement, and you certainly can't fool people who have negotiated lots of trade agreements in their time. The only people you can possibly fool are the unaware public, a group of people who no longer have any say in anything that happens for a few years now. You might be able to understand it if he was trying to push this just before the general election, but now, what's the point? What is the point? The general public can have no impact on this whatsoever. And no, we don't do revolutions in this country. So it was all the same old humdrum until I saw something the EU said. Essentially, the actual negotiations come down to this. The UK wants to agree lots of little mini bilateral agreements. That is why the UK have not published and not presented its proposal for a trade deal. It doesn't want one. It wants tiny little agreements on lots of little areas, and it wants to do it in the order it wants to do it. Unfortunately, that's not what the EU wants. The EU wants a deal that encompasses everything. It's all or nothing. And this was highlighted when the UK tried to negotiate a deal for UK labs this week, which would allow them to certify products for the EU market. Now, before I explain what the EU said to this, Their cheeky little response. Consider this. So imagine the scenario in reverse. Let us imagine that the EU put forward a proposal that allowed laboratories in EU countries, say Germany or France, to be allowed to certify products for the UK market, independently of the UK government. What do you think Brexiteers would say to that? They'd be livid, of course. So why do they think it's fine for UK labs to be allowed to certify things for the EU market from outside the EU? Doesn't make any sense. So it's a non-starter. But the actual nature of this agreement is not the main point here. Obviously, they wouldn't agree to that. But it's the fact that the UK keeps trying to push this idea in any way that it's politically, economically, or even legally possible to get all of the benefits of EU membership with none of the drawbacks. Even if you could come up with a deal that would allow it legally, no EU member state would go along with it. So the UK asks to be able to certify goods as being fit for sale in the EU. And what did the EU say to this? Brexit means Brexit. But on a more serious note, what is the implication of this? So you can see why the UK would want the EU to agree to this. They must know they were never going to, but you know why they would want to. If centres in the UK can't certify products as being fit for sale in the EU, which the EU will never sign up to. After all, Brexiteers would never allow the UK government to sign up to a reciprocal arrangement. Then this has massive implications for our EU trade after we leave the transition period, because we already know we're going to have troubles enough with export and import documents and checks at the border, which we haven't got the facilities or the staff for yet. All of that. But don't worry, Michael Gove says it'll be sorted by 2025. So we're only going to have 4 years of chaos. And that's nice. But even after that point, you know, how do we manufacture goods for sale in the EU? We have to be able to certify them as fit for sale in the EU. The EU is saying, no, you can't do that. So what has to happen is those companies, those manufacturing businesses, would have to set up a centre in an EU country. And what does that mean? It's obvious. That means more job losses, because they've got to set up offices outside of the UK, and obviously they need staff. I mean, if the staff want to move to that office in another EU country, okay, fine if they can get the visas to do that, because that won't be automatic either. But generally speaking, what that's going to mean is fewer jobs in the UK. And that's what this latest round of Brexit brings us. More unemployment. Because the British side are slowly accepting now publicly that a deal is unlikely by the end of the year. Of course, they knew right from the start, because it's been their aim not to get a deal by the end of the year, but just to put the blame somewhere else. So they're basically coming around to the idea that, yeah, we're not really going to get a deal now by the end of the year, but they still won't extend. Fun times. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.